Okay. All right. Can everyone hear me? Good morning and good evening and good night, everyone. I hope you're all well. Good to see faces, faces that are friends with whom we keep in touch, and to actually see you here on Zoom is really heartening. I think we are in for a real treat. Kashiana, you've been receiving texts about what I've been feeling about your book. I'm in complete awe of what I've read and the level of craft and the jump and huge shift in craft from your previous book. I mean, it speaks of a poet who takes her craft very seriously, has worked very hard, and now is asking us as readers and as writers not to be lazy. So you've set a certain bar, I think, and I'm really, really, really proud of you. Bhaswati, Kashiana sent me a few of your poems. I couldn't read the whole book. She sent me about 5 or 6 poems. And yeah, just a couple of housekeeping rules. What we generally do with Matwala programs is we don't waste too much time reading lengthy bios. We place it in the chat so you can take your time to read it, and then it's there to go back to, because we try to maximize the time for the poets, because essentially these events are about poetry, and the accolades are there in the background, but we're here to really listen to the poets. So this is something that we've been doing right from the beginning. We don't spend too much time reading out bios, because I think there's an eagerness to actually listen to the conversation, listen to the poems, listen to the poets. That really is the emphasis. So most poets who come to Matwala are so incredibly talented. The resumes are very long, bios are very long, and so it's there in the chat for all of you to look at. So Bhaswati and Kashiana, welcome this morning. Congratulations on your new books. We know the delight that courses through our veins every time a book comes into the world. They're very fine blurbs on both, praising the books. I'm not going to take too much time in my analysis, just a couple of sentences. And I noticed that for both of you, home is the essential theme. I know from Kashiana's work that the domestic front is something that she claims as her own, with absolutely no hesitation or no apology, as the domestic front being something inferior to the wars that men wage and are the actual stuff of poetry. So this has been Kashiana's claim from the beginning, and I think she stakes that claim very, very clearly in this collection, with absolutely such surety and such ownership, with a level of craft that is just incredible. If you browse through Kashiana's book, it seems very didactic to a certain extent, because 50% of the poems are how to. They're like manuals. They're didactic, and within that apparent, I'll say apparent because they're not really didactic. She uses childhood as her primary lens to anchor the self in universe. So this is how Kashiana, I think, her poetics happen through the domestic front. Uh, she's very sure where home is. It's her north star in a sense. It's the guiding light. In Bhaswati's poems, what I noticed, I didn't read too many. I think Kashiana sent me about 6 or 7 poems. We find home as that mythical place that is never achieved. It's something that one is in search of, one is yearning for. It is not a geographical place. She alludes to home as a kind of an emotional bastion we're always looking for. So these were my just initial observations from both the collections, and I haven't made any lengthy notes. I'm just speaking from the way these poems affected me and affected my heart. I actually do want to turn that over to the poets, because I think it's their show today. So, welcome, and waiting to hear more from both of you. And Bhaswati, another thing I just wanted to say was there's a beautiful lyricism in your poems, and the lyricism of longing, actually, and yearning, uh, as we as we go through the apparent motions of living through space and time, uh, going through the illusions of home, and then the dismantling of the illusion, and then the search again. So I think this is kind of the rhythm that's happening in your poems. So, having said that, I'm going to turn it over to both of you, and really looking forward. Hearty congratulations to you both again, and thrilled to do this with Matwala. Take care.
Thank you. Usha, thank you. I'll start because I want to make sure, as a Matwala host, we give we give Bhaswati the ability to start and orient us to poetry. But I do want to say a huge thank you to Usha, but to Matwala. And for those of you who are our Matwala family, you know what we do. You know what Usha and Pramila have built. This is the 10th anniversary of Matwala this year, and we've been spending time partnering, orienting, right? Usha and Pramila have given their entire heart and soul to this for the last 10 years, and I'm just so proud to be associated with it. So just if you don't follow Matwala, please go to our website and take a look at all of the work that's happening there. Um, with that being said, Usha always says, right, it's not until we do for community, it's not until we do for each other that our purpose as a poet is served. And it was with that lens, Usha, that I reached out to Bhaswati, knowing that this is her first collection that's launched, and it seemed like the right place to dialogue with each other. The poetry, we as you know, Matwala does new book launches. It's been doing the new book launches for a couple of years now, but this was again Usha's brainchild to say, let's do poets and poetry in spotlight. And so really about today is about reading, but it's also about dialoguing. So with that, I'm going to start with my first question connected to Usha, what you said about the home and both the transience and the rootedness of home. So Bhaswati, A, welcome. B, it's an absolute honor to be reading besides you and alongside you. You and I have had a chance to be in person in the same space, and there was a kindred connection, a kindred spirit that we found in each other, like many of us as poets do. Shabnam, thank you for joining. Bhaswati, my question very much connected to Usha's observations is, how do you navigate the tension between that rootedness and transience, right? Especially when home is more either a memory or a mythic space than it's a physical space. Tell us about that, and then please read a poem or two.
First of all, I just want
just excuse me one. Kashiana, every time you ask a question, can you put it in the chat box?
Yes, I will. Yes.
So it becomes, we can keep referring to that.
Thank you, Usha. Yes, I'll do that. Yeah. Go ahead.
Thanks, Kashiana. And just wanted to thank Usha and you from the bottom of my heart, and Matwala for hosting this wonderful session. I'll just echo Usha to say that I'm in complete awe of Witching Hour, and I'm still wrapping my head around what an awesome and amazing collection of poems this is. Just to answer your question, home has always been something that has been part of my consciousness because of my family history, in part. So I grew up in a joint family surrounded by my grandparents who were displaced during partition, and they lost their land and belongings in what was East Pakistan, which is now Bangladesh. So there was this constant current of displacement, of loss, of nostalgia, all of those things in my grandmother's stories. And she was a very vivid storyteller. So we grew up listening to those stories. And I think that is where the mythical aspect of home entered into my consciousness, because I would hear about a place that was unlike the one I was growing up in. I would hear about sprawling fruit orchards and rivers and a very riverine, fertile landscape. And here I was in arid Delhi, where there was no water source close to us. There were no fruit orchards. We were living in a very small house, a government quarter. And so it really was mythical, listening to those stories of home. But I still had a sense of being rooted because I was born in Delhi and I was growing up in Delhi. So Delhi was practically the only home that I knew. It was when I moved to North America after getting married that this sense of dislocation started haunting me as well. And it was sort of strange. In a weird way, I could, for the first time in my lived experience, sense the disconnect or the sense of dislocation, displacement that my grandmother had been through, because now it was part of my experience. Although my migration was not forced like hers, it still was a loss. And I guess in the end, all migrations are forced in one way or the other, because whatever your circumstances are, you feel compelled or impelled enough to move to a different part of the world. So I think that is when I really started to understand. So from the mythical aspect, it became a very personal experience, a lived experience for me. And when I started writing poems, I just could see that theme sort of coming back to me in different forms. So no matter where I went, where in the world I went, whether I was traveling or I was just coming back home, Delhi is quote unquote my home. I had that sense of push and pull. It was a constant tug that I was feeling. So I think that is how these poems sort of came to be, and that's what's reflected.
Thank you, Bhaswati. And yes, clearly, and I cannot wait to read a poem I've chosen of your collection, but we'll let you go first. Why don't you share a poem or two that you'd like to read today? And Bhaswati, do you have the book? Do you want to show the cover? It's a beautiful cover too.
I have it. Is it showing clearly?
A little. It's coming in. I think it's because of the background. It's coming in out. But yes, it's a beautiful collection.
So I will read a poem called Temporary and Permanent. It is about the various addresses that I have lived in and various addresses that I've heard about growing up. Temporary and permanent. Addresses have slippery loyalties. Elopers with time, they whisk away drafts of air, sunshine from a courtyard, faceless friends. Trick you into letting go of them, but hang around like apparitions with missing ID cards. Some become friends, stalkers for life. Number 658 in the government colony, where I first learned what a newborn baby and a curfew looked like. There are those that mimic the calendar, 2011, and become outdated yearly, then fade out. Streets, blocks, gullies form new alliances. Find fresh candidates to choke with fear, or Section 144 of the Indian Penal Code. My permanent address had an oblique C stuck to it, a tethered, tiresome appendage. The troubles that skinny slant caused us, far from oblique. Postmen spurned the slash and left my exam results elsewhere. Delivery boys rang a different doorbell, the seek kebab they brought deflating inside a cold polythene parcel. In the gully behind this house, my brother got the name Hari, not because of his godliness, but because his cricketing pals wanted him to hurry up between the wickets. My grandmother gave us her village address noted with peripheral markers, spatial jigsaws, sprawling fruit orchards, a pond as big as a river, the temple my brother found pieces of when he visited the village years after grandma died, pining for it. Some addresses trespass time's unpatrolled fence to become permanent, even when they are temporary. Their foggy chimera blurs one's vision.
So beautiful. So beautiful.
It's a lovely poem.
So, can we enter into a dialogue now about your collection, Kashiana?
Go for it.
Yeah. And I'll also enter the question into the chat. But I felt reading this collection that the theme or the continuality of Ouroboros, it's a current that runs deep in the poems of Witching Hour. I also found this as being reflective of the feminine experience in your poems. How do you see these two intersecting in the collection?
Bhaswati, thank you. Thank you for that beautiful and absolutely accurate observation. The Ouroboros, which is, if everybody knows, right, that's the dragon or the snake eating its own tail. I discovered a funny fact as I was researching that it's also for those of us who may not be tattoo fans, or the Ouroboros is the most popular tattoo in the world. It's the most frequently made tattoo that people request in the world. So that was just a fun fact. But yes, it's the Bhaswati, like you said, it's the endless cycle of self-devouring and renewal, right? And felt like an organic metaphor for, to your point, both the feminine experience, but also in this specific space, the themes in Witching Hour. And while, like Usha said, the witching hour may have come to be from the place of a child's birth and the observation of a woman, in this case, a grandmother, learning from the child, it really is about the feminine experience and the cyclical motion, right, that continues to show up and was very obvious to me as I sat in that very intense year with a child. And each of these poems, the how-to ones and the non-how-to ones, move through these cycles: birth, right, of course, but also loss, silence, rage of a newborn child's mother, the conflict between the parents, the reclaiming of the motherly space by the grandmother, so desire. And in the end, as you go through this feminine experience, it is inherently Ouroboros. It devours, right, what no longer serves, whether it's our own bodies. It metabolizes pain, and it gives rise to something that's startlingly alive. So yes, right, Bhaswati, it is both an undercurrent as well as an anchor as far as Witching Hour is concerned. Thank you. And maybe with that, I can read that poem just to ground those that have not read it. It's the opening. That is Witching Hour. I know Sufia could not join, but I do want to call out the cover artist. That's Sufia Khatun. She and I met, and I presented the concept to her, and she came up with this absolutely stunning. If you see it, it's obviously a pregnant woman's belly. It's got a little fetal pattern inside, and it's got the scales. So that's the Ouroboros pattern again, kind of metaphorized in the cover itself. So want to call out Sufia. She's done a few covers for a few different collections, but she's an absolutely amazing artist. This poem is called All is Ouroboros. All is Ouroboros. Here is the arrival of dragonflies, hushed gathering of summer. Here is another omitted temple, yoking the past and the present. Here stands a lamppost, witness to careful streets. Here is a door almost wide open, bookmarked with remembering. Here is the eye of a dense storm, clenching tight her wilding teeth. Here is yet another history book, an unflinching experiment in lies. Here stands a brooding intersection, curved into hunched recollection. Here are those raging oceans, their hum arriving in waves. Here is my silver-chested river, speed a gesture of its aliveness. Here is a seven-spotted ladybug, a tender talisman of sacred silence. Here is a feathered ball of hope, spasm song that is the sparrow, paraphernalia of ordinary, fungi manifesting the dirt, forsythia gaze of birthing, an unfazed spell of full moon in the toiling of earthworm, slime of our skin, shimmer of epochs, tunnels into earth. Let one thing stay clear, as the world catalogues amnesia and names, always names, earth itself is named, blue marble, pale blue dot, earth rise, galaxies are all undercurrents of leached blood, wastelands, 70 families of muted ozines, all is Ouroboros. All is Ouroboros. That's the pre-poem before the collection begins from Witching Hour. Thank you, Bhaswati, for calling that out.
It's absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
And just as I was reading those opening lines and the imagery, the metaphors, there was just this luminescence that I was filled up with right at the start of the book, and it only kept getting brighter and even more luminescent as I went through. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Bhaswati. So Bhaswati, there is a particular poem that I want to kind of anchor on, and that's the Displaced Persons Colony in your collection. It's probably somewhere in the first third of the collection. And going back to thresholds, I saw multiple thresholds in that one poem, right? There was a scarcity and an imagination. There was the past, which you just spoke about your grandmother, your past, but your ancestral past, and a yet unclaimed future, right? There's a line there that's stood with me. I have it written here as well, which is, only we don't know if we are in place yet. And we go back to what Usha said, right? Home being the mythic, unsought, constantly sought, and yet not reached or arrived at. So could you talk about how the act of your writing becomes a threshold for you, and does poetry help you reconcile those contradictions of being rooted and unrooted? Could you speak to that and then read a poem, either that one or any other around that?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Kashiana. And I just want to give us a little background on the title of the poem itself. It's called Displaced Persons Colony. And how I got to that title was just by knowing what the place that I grew up in Delhi was called officially. So I grew up in a place called Chittaranjan Park. It was actually a post-partition colony that came up for the people who were displaced from East Pakistan. So Bengalis mostly. And the official name that was registered for the colony is East Pakistan Displaced Persons Colony. So that's what it's called, EPDP colony. Chittaranjan Park is the informal name that it goes by. And so that is how the title of this poem came about. And as I thought of all the different strands that contributed to this idea of displacement and looking for home, searching for home, finally getting into one's home, I continued to probe the question a bit deeper and realized that even when my grandmother built this home that this poem describes, it goes on to describe, even when we were finally in our own home, quote unquote, there was not, that sense of permanency was not achieved. So even though it was your own home, it wasn't quite home yet. So I could see that sense of being permanently dislocated in some way, that kept coming back. And I think that is how I try to use poetry in not as a tool to receive answers, but to probe deeper into the questions that have always hung around this notion of home and uh, displacement and loss. And I think it just goes from one question to the next, but there is no finality, as there was no finality even in our experience. I don't know if I answered your question.
Well, you did, but that's the whole point. I'd love for others to react to that, Bhaswati. I just want to say what you said about the poetry as a threshold of questions, right? I think of poetry as a problem-solving tool, right? But not to find the answers, to find the questions that you need to ask. So would love for Usha or others to react and chime in before you read your next poem as well, Usha, or others on the.
Kashiana, when people will narrate a history of themselves, it's a description. But when that's married so well by both you and Bhaswati with just beautiful language and imagery, that becomes poetry, right? That's lovely for me, that combination.
Thank you, Srini. Go ahead, Bhaswati. Why don't you read another?
I'll read Displaced Persons, or maybe Nostalgic for a Place Never Seen, which is the titular poem. Yeah. Nostalgic for a Place Never Seen. Brides in some places catch moonbeams through a sieve, a ritual insurance on a husband's longevity. When she left home, my grandma smuggled a river in her eyelids. Shugandha, it was called. Shugandha, the sweet-smelling one. She stole the river so that whenever she shed a tear, she could smell the river in the air around her, an insurance against forgetting. Her new home had no water near it. In Jhalokati, her forever former home, Shugandha courses on the same as before. Canals branch out from its cool aquamarine breadth to steer thirsty travelers. With a little help, the brook learns to punctuate it herself. A green dreamscape holds the water in a bracket. A floating bamboo bridge, bony, resolute, gives a paragraph break to its carefree run-on sentence streams. On the edge of a fisherman's home, little girls pull toy boats, their giggles running over the river's ripples. In a video about Shugandha, I see a mother combing her daughter's hair. Before I know it, the daughter turns into my grandmother and breaks into a song. Why don't you come to our house anymore? She asks.
Wow. Can you say say that again, Bhaswati? You said the daughter turns into the
My grandma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that river on the eyelids. Something like I just love that imagery.
Beautiful. Yeah. I just want to expand on this thought a little bit more, because I have never visited that place that my grandmother was from and would describe with such joy and vividness, and also tinged with pain and hurt, that I have always wanted to go and visit. And my brother was fortunate enough that because of work reasons, he was able to go to Bangladesh on a trip, and he made sure that he went and found the village that my grandmother would talk about. And he even was able to locate the very house that they lived in, which is now changed, of course, but he was able to identify it. And since that is such a big yearning in me, I just satiate that desire by watching videos of that place. And from time to time, I'll just go on YouTube. And we're lucky now that we at least get some recorded visuals of those places. It's, of course, not the same as it was during my grandmother's time, but much of these artifacts, like the living artifacts like rivers and streams, they still carry the same song, I think. And when I saw this fisherwoman, combing her daughter's hair and the little girls playing, it was as if I saw my grandmother sitting by that door, and she would have done the same in her childhood, I guess. So that's how the end of this poem came to me.
If I have permission, I'm going to deviate from Witching Hour and actually read a poem from my first collection, Shelling Peanuts and Stringing Words. And I don't need to say anything, but Bhaswati, that leans into the partition, but this is about my father going back to find his home in Pakistan after, like, he moved. He was a child. I think he was 6 or 7 when the partition happened, and then he went there many years later. I think he was in his mid-50s when he visited the place. So if it's okay, just in the spirit of honoring our ancestors and those that immigrated by choice or not, I'm going to read that poem.
That'd be lovely. Please, Kashiana.
This is called Mangroves. Mangroves, Act 1. I set out once looking for mangroves with haunted stories about the withered woman with feet that turned inwards, the mangroves with secret spells hovering over lampposts, the mangroves where boys scuffled and where men gathered to grope for survival, the mangroves that displaced the rotten smell of burning flesh as each canopy collapsed into an Asian pile. Act 2. I waited. I waited to enter the looming arch of the house that echoed my mother's desires in entombed gold and treasures. The house that watched, silent, the gates that creaked each howling ground, recollecting the plea, wretchedness of bruised bodies and naked shadows still lingering behind its walls. Act 3. I walked. I walked the platform again, chugging wheels that recited memories of trains moving like ghosts between places. Chugging wheels that recited memories of trains moving like ghosts between places, transporting phantoms. The platform I walked again covered me in soot of butchered history. I lifted some soil, some scars, some sketches. Act 4. I opened the tall gates and entered against my will. Into the portico to my beginnings, I swaddled myself with the elegance of my mother, the industriousness of my father, the grit of my brothers, the sacrifice of my sisters, the flawlessness of their songs as they chanted, possessed to their dead and their crippled and their humiliated and their young and newborn. Act 5. I bow in thankfulness and accept the warm tea served by the house lady on the veranda. Thank you. That's Mangroves. It's a hard poem to read. I've read it many times, but Bhaswati, I had to read it in light of everything that you were talking about.
I have heard you reading it before, and it just touches me the same every time, and especially the end. gives me goosebumps.
Thank you.
May I just add here that suddenly there's this connection between your books, although they are on completely different subject matters. Yours is The Witching Hour, it's about a newborn baby, about motherhood and all of that. And Bhaswati's is about looking and finding a home, or displacement and migration, and the loss of leaving your home behind in a country, and retold by her grandmother to her. But I just wanted to bring in this whole concept of the Ouroboros that we were talking about 5 minutes back, and this was about, and Carl Jung, he calls it the mandala of alchemy. It's like the completion of the individuation process. I'm sorry to use long words, but Bhaswati, I just wanted to say this to you, that if you're yearning so much to go and visit that place and see it with your own eyes, you absolutely must, because that is the Ouroboros for you. It's how your circle is going to get completed. And it's such an ancient symbol, but brought into this contemporary context, it just is absolutely bang on. It's like that's the way that, maybe you will find the home that you've been looking for. Although you may not live in it, but somewhere, something will complete itself.
I have to go, Vinita. I just don't know when it's going to be, but I know it has to happen. Yeah.
It has to happen, exactly.
Isn't it same as Kundalini at Mooladhara?
No.
No? Kundalini at Mooladhara.
No, it's a three-coiled serpent resting at the base of your spine. But this Ouroboros is that a snake that eats its own head or tail, whatever way you look at it.
Okay.
It's a mythical symbol, and a very ancient. It's there in Hermeticism and Egyptian.
Yes. Thank you, Vinita.
May I speak to something that Bhaswati ji said about the forced migratory impulse? That somehow struck a chord. And it reminded me of a quote by the author Barry Lopez, who says that we are searching for boats that we have forgotten how to build. And I feel migration is not always a physical movement. I think it's also neural. It's internal. Speaking of my own situation now with restricted mobility from an illness circumstance, it has prompted an inward migration. And there's a weird constraint, but a liberation in the process where something breaks open and you cross new frontiers. And that's what I'm getting from the subtext of your poetry, that on an imaginal level, you are visiting the lost landscape. That's what's coming to me from your reading. And Kashiana, what can I say? It's very emotional to hear you speak. I would describe your poems as, with apologies to E.M. Forster, as a womb with a view. There is an acoustical embodiment of viscera. It's very much, there's a lot of physicality. I'm not sure how you pull that off. And it's sustained through the, never quite seen anything like it, where the rhythm is really almost your blood flowing. And that's what comes to me. And the fury that you have managed to channel is again, it takes an immeasurable body to come up with what you have. So thank you for that very moving
Thank you.
rendition.
Thank you, Shabnam. Thank you, and thank you, everybody, for engaging. Anybody else? If not, we'll move on to another poem and listen to another one. This one, I'm going to shift.
I do have a question for Kashiana.
Go ahead, Bhaswati. Go ahead, Bhaswati.
Yeah, as I read your poems, especially the ones that are spawned off your experience as a grandmother, I've just found them to be breathtaking as everyone else. And you've created almost to me, it was close to studying the natural world, where silence is key in grasping the vocabulary. I just want to know how these poems came to you. Did you conceive them, and pun intended, as a...
I lost my connection for a little bit. I'm back now. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Were you able to catch the question, Kashiana?
Yes, I got the question. Thank you. Bhaswati, of course, I'm so honored. I'm tearing up, not just because of the partition poem, but Usha spent so much of herself in the collection. As she was saying, she was constantly messaging me as she was reading. Vinita, of course, you were one of my pre-readers, Shabnam, Bhaswati. I'm just like, I cannot. I'm so honored. But to answer the question, Bhaswati, that you asked, that your observation means a great deal. And I want to say that these poems emerged quietly, but very insistently. And when hindsight is 2020, right? When self-reflecting on it after the fact, Kabir, that's my grandson, he's going to be 4 years in a week or so on the 4th of June. But thinking back on the experience and what led to this, Bhaswati, to your point, is I realized that becoming a grandmother, again, going back to the theme of Ouroboros, wasn't just a personal shift, it was an ontological one. It rearranged my own relationship to time, to lineage, and also to language. Shabnam, a little bit connected to what you said about the language. And suddenly I was like, I'm like, to use the farming metaphor, I'm both the seed and the soil of what's happening in the space of family, Usha, like you said, about being rooted in domesticity, but it felt like I'm the seed and soil of what's happening and what's being created. And it was very, very intense, and it was almost bodily. No, Bhaswati, I did not initially conceive the poems as a collection. They arrived in almost unannounced, of course. They did arrive unannounced, and mostly in moments of very deep, either the words I'll use is either deep stillness, even though the first year with a baby is chaotic in a household, but they arrived in those moments of deep stillness or in deep awe of this thing, right? This little thing that's almost like the Christian or the God in your hands. And you're like, oh my God, like I'm holding this purest soul in my arms. And that was hard to put it in words, but I would say stillness and awe comes to mind. Writing about them did feel akin to observing the natural world, like I said, right? Like one had to sharpen one's listening instincts, right? Like how was I tracking the growth, the decay, the renewal? And I'll read the next poem about the new mother, which speaks to the decay and, right, both the decay, the decades that go into making of a mother and the renewal of a mother, but they arrived by their own. Over time, yes, Bhaswati, obviously I realized that These poems were becoming something sacred to me personally, and probably intergenerational from a universal perspective as well. And so I had to then transition it into a collection, but it wasn't about legacy. It was about fragility, right? It felt like these encounters were so fleeting that I had to capture them somehow. And remember, this was a COVID baby. So there was a lot going on in the outside world that was very fragile as well. Does that, I know it's a complex question and a complex answer, but Bhaswati, I hope that gets to the spirit of what you were trying to say in that question.
Yeah, deep stillness and moments of deep awe. I think that's probably the key. And that's why it felt like it's almost similar to observing the natural world, where so much of it is a mystery to us. And we're trying to locate those meanings and decipher the signs. And that's what I gleaned from your collection as well. So thank you. Yeah. And if you can read a poem now.
I'll read a poem that really places it in the physical, in the actual specific experience. And everybody of you, Shabnam, Usha, Bhaswati, Vinita, you've referred to that. So I'll read this poem, and it's called How to Inhabit Her Like a 6-Month-Old. And this is obviously, I'm going to speak to Mansi, is my daughter-in-law, but to every mother, all of us, every mother, whether birth mother or otherwise, right? But mother to a human, or mother to a four-legged, or mother to plants, like any motherhood is again the spirit of Ouroboros. So how to inhabit her like a 6-month-old. A poem, as a child is of mother, sound finds home in the unborn shapes, wild geese following the softest paths of a sapling body into unnamed flashbacks. Ballads from months of prior iterations, 300 bones just bloomed. Wailing bosom, palms like petals unfurling on her heart, a feto-maternal transfer of biosignatures. Drowning in her own weight to be born, child tricks her into newness. 4 elder nudging her to be an audacious woman. Surrender to mouse-like muse, crinkled and wrinkled as grandpa, grunting sounds, an orchestra of folklore, muffled chants of superstitions, a pliant torso, unwieldy inside chenille, eyes a pinprick of luster, her hair a braided halo of sadhvi locks, his puckered lips, choreographed palms, unraveled sleep of 7 for mothers, their weight is her weight, is his weight, this belonging as heavy as wet diapers, a primal curling of toes, fidgeting tips of fingers, thrash and pull at her chest. She sways in a maneuver of holiness. They say this is God. She sees a tadpole. They say this is God. She sees a tadpole. And it ends with 2 haiku-like constructs, contradictions of knowing and unknowing, birth positions. Contradictions of knowing and unknowing, birth positions. Goddess Aditi, the infinite fertility of Prithvi. Goddess Aditi, the infinite fertility of Prithvi. And that's how to inhabit her like a 6-month-old.
Ending is very powerful.
Thank you. Thank you. It takes it, but you need to pause. Like Shabnam, you said it is physical, right? A lot of these are very physical. I'm going to request, if it's okay, Vinita, especially you, because you read the poem prior to it fully forming. Just if you want to share a few of your thoughts and either read a poem or tell me if you'd like me to read a poem. And Usha, likewise to you. And Bhaswati, I have a poem request for you as well.
Thank you, Kashiana. I was really privileged to read your manuscript when it was, I guess, still being formed or finalized or whatever. And I remember just marveling at the craft of your poetry. It just blew me away, and I just sat back in my chair and I was like, wow. And I remember writing to you and telling you that you're one of my 5 favorite all-time poets.
Yes, you did.
It was so good. It was so good. And honestly, I just want to say this to everyone here, that the thing about Kashiana's poetry is that it's beautifully conceived. If you could really just think about that. The craft comes later, the expression comes later, the language comes later, but just the way that she conceives a poem is just so novel. It's unique, and she's got her stamp all over whatever she writes. So that's the biggest strength a poet can have. Because if your poem looks like any other poem that is, being circulated in the universe, it's not going to feel different. It's not going to set itself apart. But Kashiana has no worries on that account. She conceives her poems very, very, very beautifully. So that's number one. The second thing is, of course, the craft. And everybody has felt that they've resonated with this feeling of awe when they read your poems. I remember Bhaswati mentioning the same thing. Usha messaged you so many times as you shared with us. So it has that kind of effect. And for me, my favorite poem in your collection was the C minus.
You had mentioned that, yes.
Yeah. And I would not even dare to read it. I would request you to read it because it has such unspeakable pain in it. And then here's this poet who's very gingerly approaching the subject, and she can't bear to even touch the words with her hands. So she's using these forceps, She's using these forceps to touch each and every word very, very delicately and share it with the readers. It just moved me too deeply for me to read it. I would request you to, Kashiana, please read that poem.
Thank you. Vinita, thank you. And yes, I remember you saying that to me, and I want you to know that was a poem, that poem in particular was, I was questioning, is it in or is it out? Is it in the collection or is it out? But your words and your encouragement gave me the courage to put it in the poem because yes, it is exactly what you said. I'll read it, and then Bhaswati, I'm going to just say I have a request for you to read a poem. Either read me and us, because I'd love for the audience to hear Crafting of a River, or Crafting a River. I'm sorry, that's the title of the poem. Let's read this one. It's called Grandmother Wonders If She Was a C minus Mother. And this speaks to just the judgmental, everything is stacked and ranked and numbered, as well as speaks to the Ouroboros. It connects, Bhaswati, to the point you had about my rebirthing myself in the process of rearing a grandchild as well. Grandmother wonders if she was a C minus mother. This is broken by years. Again, connection, Bhaswati, you bring numbers and the house numbers that you had. And when you were reading that poem, I was thinking, so we all are one organism ultimately as poets, right? 1992. Magician arrives after 3 years of anchorage. The sail has set forth, embellished with a lunula-sized seed, this child Buddha, an afterglow, adult sun, scribe of respite and repair, capacious serenity of man and wife. And 1992 is when my son was born. 1998. Prayer, savored as afterthought, albeit essential, and leaves her soaked in love, How much craving can a mother take? How much of mother can a daughter be? How a fledgling swells inside a adjusted body. 1998 was the birth of my daughter. I say magician. 1992, my son's name is Sahir, which means magician. My daughter's name is Sana, which means prayer. 1998, stillness after cremating. The brother who had made her mother before she had her own bestows her with a laceration as deep as it is wide, as it is lush, as it is deluge, as it is tsunami, as it is hurricane, as it is tornado, as it is apocalypse. Still, she survives, stubborn and salvaged, swimming in joint placentas of inevitable loss. 2008, children grown up, inhaled sense of a woman's absent embrace, learn how she goes about business, regrets of homemaking, kisses a hymnal about finding worship in work, does laundry, packs tiffins, cuddles their purest forms, late from work again delivers life into life, spooning an inside, outside, and outside, inside. 2021, photo of first scan. It is tiny, a tiny bean as scrawny as can be, our squeals, shrieks, and silence. Grandparents to be soon born, there is nothing else left to become. He grows inch by inch, and she cannot but wonder, what is the entire point? She diminishes into smallness, he the primordial pulse at the corner of her constellation. 2022, Kabir, now unstoppableness. Kabir, the equator of a wobbly earth. His eyes are magnets that gather poles of her lands towards each other. Magnetism so strong it aches, as keen as scalpel, as tender as a fawn. 2023, Triceratops, or Rex maybe, rolls on pretend floors, worming through a snaking tunnel, hops and skips to the randomness of Alexa songs, teapots by a dozen, discovers recipes she never knew were buried inside her bones, ballerina, walking on arthritic tippy toes, whispered calls, her darkness a bosom cleaved into light. 2024, often undresses into wonder. Had she been a C- mother, made poor parenting choices? Did she care enough, sacrifice enough, poetry for ancestors, stay curious enough, clutched too tight, let go too easily, held living as well as those dead inside carefully wrapped envelopes? Will her obituary be an erasure? Would someone ponder a little longer? Will there even be one? Will anyone know to carry her corpse away into the crackling corn of a barbecue dusk? Could stories be saved inside magic potions to become more potent? Grandmother wonders if she was a C- mother. Vinita, thank you for calling that out. I hadn't chosen that to read.
It's absolutely brilliant. And I'm moved all over again. I'm sorry if you found it difficult to read all of that, but I just had to hear it in your voice.
Thank you. Thank you. Bhaswati, let's hear Crafting a River. Usha wants to say something.
Bhaswati and Kashiana, just a very, very basic housekeeping. Please post your book order information so people can access your books, and I'm sure they want to buy them. So just please share that, because suddenly we come to the end of a program and we're wrapping up, and we might just miss that.
Usha, thank you for the reminder. I put mine. Bhaswati, I'll put your website there if your links are on the website as well.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Kashiana. And read Crafting a River. Between the two ends of a loom, a river flows. The weaver sits on the bank, shaping the river. Warp meets weft, the fabrics ebb and tide, so the textile breathes. Creating a river is back-breaking work. You have to rein in the wraps through reeds, link each other with a shuttle, calculations done with the math skill of a mother who has mastered keeping her brood together. The river swells with colors, its waves carrying shades, the rungrays infused into each thread. Temples and gardens grows on its banks, paisley pearls and buds bloom on its body. In an ancient city, drooping men weave crimson rivers for new brides. They murmur the songs of a weaver, master weaver, who worked the loom and crafted a luminous tapestry without a single hole, a river so whole it forgot its banks. Thank you.
Oh.
That ending just like stunned me. It's so beautiful. I'm sure.
And it comes back to your grandson, Kabir. So
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
thank you.
Oh, I want to almost pause. It's been intense and extremely beautiful. Usha, I'm going to let you take the space for a little bit before maybe we read another poem or two.
I don't think I want to say anything right away. I'm just saving the reactions and responses for the end. It's your space. You take time to breathe, and come back when you're ready.
That I want to read a poem, Bhaswati, from your collection, if I may dare to. And this one's the Sunday mornings in Lajpat Nagar. You mentioned at the beginning when you were talking that you'd lived your life in New Delhi, and that's what you knew about. I loved it. It's playful in its own way, but of course feeds into all the themes we've been talking about. So Bhaswati, if you're okay, I'd like to read that for you.
Please, Kashiana, it will be an honor.
Sunday mornings in Lajpat Nagar, from Bhaswati's collection, Nostalgic for a Place Never Seen. Sunday mornings in Lajpat Nagar. Here, everything is on full display. Daily life is laid out on street patris. Woks and graters, plastic soap cases, frilly frocks and underwear, the indispensability of hard selling, the notoriety of bargaining. We buy all the necessary things. My birthday dress, an imitation pearl necklace. Ma's false bun, brother's skate shoes before entering the narrow alley of sari shops. This is where Ma buys her office wear on a budget. Two young men pull out yards and yards of lilting georgettes and printed cotton while a boy fetches Campa orange for little me. On Sundays, our only day off from niggly demands, mother's office, our school, Ma brings us to this chaotic, mercantile Disneyland. We siblings come only for the chole bhature. At our age, we understand deep-fried dough better than mother's haath taan, her fist tightened by shrinking cash. Every Sunday, an uncle, a middle-aged dry fruit seller with a big shop, stuffs my fist with the fattest cashews and raisins. With a stone for one of his eyes, he remains the market's centerpiece. I gladly accept his delicious gift for years without knowing him or the reason for his affection. Years later, when I returned to the now hip market for my wedding shopping, Uncle and his nut shop are still around. We've both grown older and cold. And like refugees, he possibly from Peshawar in West Pakistan, my family from Barizal in East, who have finally ground beneath their feet, we feign not recognizing each other. I'm so happy I read that. I've been wanting to read that poem.
Thank you so much. And if you would allow me, I also want to read something from Witching Hour.
Of course.
And the poem that I want to read is How to Eat a Mango Like a 9-Month-Old.
Yes, please.
It's mango season right now in Delhi, and absolutely loving the fruit shamelessly. So this just resonates a lot right now. How to Eat a Mango Like a 9-Month-Old from Kashiana's Witching Hour. Always grab the mango pit before anyone else claims it. Hum it as though a heart surgeon palpating hunger, top to bottom. Dip fingertips, 3,000 receptors into buttery flesh, scavenge, bring the mustached pit to your lips, jaw and o, letting seed into cave, spill it in and out. Knead stickiness of juice into a trickle as you squint with joy, neck bathed in succulence, unbothered. Let this honeyed summer live in embodied marrow. Eat on the floor, protected with newspapers, slurp into residual flesh, lengthen forearms as you suck at a ripeness. Claw into yellow, peel like the devil, teeth threading a precise path of attack, mouthfuls of folate and fiber. You never really know when satiation arrives. Hold to the preserve, perverse desire to grasp at kernel, saccharine, festival of skinned mango moons. All our grandmas live inside fables of mango, tellings of how fruits become prasad of joy, why pot-bellied Ganesha holds a plump fruit. He orbited Ma thrice, his shrine, his center food of gods, swaying across portals of life and death. 21 leaves as hammock of fertility, shifting earth, malleable nakedness of our bones, eating fire to hoard flavors inside. Thank you.
It's so surreal hearing your poem read by someone else, and it's probably the biggest joy as well. Bhaswati, thank you for reading that.
May I insert a quick comment? This set of poems read by both of you felt like I was looking at a family album, but paradoxically, that album seemed to be etched on very ancient parchment that was fraying. That's the feeling I got. And this subliminal, like Gaia energy, but it's a wounded energy that comes across. And I think as we women age, we tend to come out of the bubble of ourselves. And, we change from being the central character and turn into a setting in which other lives play. So that's what I got from the rhythm of both your poems, which seem to flow out of one another. It is quite beautiful to see. So thank you for sharing.
Shabnam, thank you. I'm going to hand over to Usha at this point and ask her to bring us to a close and share her comments. Thank you, Usha, again.
Thank you, everyone. I think we're all lulled into silence as maybe the strongest tribute to give these two poets today. I think as the reading went on, the space became quieter and more meditative and more inward. Even though we're on this public platform, I could see that kind of hushed silence is happening. And one of the things, um, Pramila and I, and we've always striven to do at Matwaala is remove ourselves from the picture as soon as possible, giving maximum space to the people we profile. We never use the space to promote our own selves or our own poetry. And I am so glad that I kept my initial words to about 2 minutes or under 2 minutes, and I moved out because we can see why. It was an intimate, small gathering, but what an informed gathering. And I think today the audience was as important as the poets in some way. I think it's, in Indian classical Sanskrit poetry, there is the understanding of poetry is that it begins with the poet and ends in the reader's mind. That is the continuum of a complete poem. It does not, and especially at a time maybe when oral traditions preceded the written poem, your poem was complete when it was received by the audience. You see that in with the ghazal in a certain mehfil sitting, that the audience participation is vital to the energy uh, of the life of a poet. And I think we saw that today with these incredible responses from the participating audience, and you somehow fulfilled the moment very, very roundly. So thank you for attending. Bhaswati, I can't tell you how glad I am that we launched your book here today. The lyricism of your work is so joyful. Uh, your images, your metaphors, they don't get, I think, submerged with too much artistry. There are some poems and there are some poets where within the, I think, the gymnastics of language, we lose the message sometimes. And I applaud you that you keep the level of linguistics simple, with profound messages and profound yearning and profound uh, sentiments. So I think that's the beauty of your work, the courage to be simple yet deep. So welcome, and I wish you all the best with the book. And I hope
can't wait, Veena.
I hope we all meet someday. Zoom is incredible, and we always hope that these spaces will become physical one day. So, Kashiana, I will, what I have felt about your work, and I think it's a stupendous achievement. And I want a lot of people to buy this book because one of my earliest responses to your work was you remind us what poetry can do all over again, what it should do, what it must do, and you remind us not to be lazy poets, uh, because you have rewritten the scope of the craft in this book. It's just so far reaching, and you're telling us don't be lazy. There are things you can do with language, and if you want to call yourself a poet, then do them. You have to keep pushing collection to collection, getting better. There's no point writing a new collection if you're not getting better with your craft. That's my personal agenda. I always hope to do a little better. Maybe it's just a millimeter or two, but push that boundaries. And that's, I think, something we owe ourselves. And I think you have fulfilled that to the max. It's incredibly inspiring. So that's about all, really. I every time we do something like this, whether 8 people attend or 80 people attend or 20 people attend, it is because of poets like you. You reinforce our commitment to Matwaala, because there are times we ask, as we get older, as time becomes more and more difficult, as bodies break down, I ask myself, do I recommit myself to Matwaala? I'm spending 75% of my time promoting others. I get very little time to do my own work. But then when I come and I listen to work like this, it feels like till my dying breath, I will keep this platform alive, and I must keep it alive. And thank you so much, all of you, with all my heart, for I don't know, just I'm going to sail through the day again today with, feeling uplifted, believing in poetry, believing in poets, believing in community. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to do this, all of you today. Thank you. And buy the books, please. That's how we can support each other. And if you have a copy, buy another 4 and gift it to someone, because that's what we're trying to do at Matwaala, support each other. We are going to have a new book showcase. I know a couple of you have a new book. I have a new chapbook. I've had no time to do anything with it, but hopefully I'll be there that day and I can say a couple of words. But today we'll end, because I want this to be Kashiana and Bhaswati's day. Please leave feeling celebrated and honored, and just feel that you make the world a better place with your work.
Usha, thank you. Just nothing, no words to say, just a virtual hug, more energy. You know how I feel about you. You're both an inspiration, a mentor, a coach, a friend, a past kindred, whatever. We can use all the words we want, but Usha, you know how I feel about you. Thank you. And thank you everybody for being here. Bhaswati, thank you for agreeing to my idea of saying, let's talk to each other. There's something there, and clearly there was. So thank you everyone for being here, and those of you who chose to join. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you. And I cannot say it any better. So I think you've echoed all my thoughts, Kashiana, beautifully.